clicked on this video, you are halfway there. So it was like putting a band-aid on an amputated leg, but the band-aid is poisonous and making me bleed even more. Western medication yet again lying to you and telling you the solution to your problem is really what is actually causing it. So the brain shrinks. Do you want to achieve things, brother? Do you want to? Oh, at least I'm not an alcoholic. Oh, at least I'm not addicted to cigarettes. And my guy, I'm not coming from the outside when I tell you this. Social anxiety, complacency, damaging my lungs and sleep. Yummy. So the positives of weed, right? Brother, we are back again with a great one today because the topic of today's video is weed, brother. So, if you clicked on this video, you are halfway there. The problem with weed is that a majority of people who smoke weed don't even know it's a problem, including one of which was me for the longest time. Boys, I smoked weed like crazy throughout high school and the beginning of college, right? Sophomore year of high school to freshman year of college, I was probably high more than I was sober, right? No joke. And for a couple reasons. One of which, I really didn't care about self-improvement. Second of which, I didn't know about the things which I'm gonna talk about in this video. So if you struggle with weed, whether that's every day, a couple times a week, once in a while, and you're trying to cut it down, this is gonna be uncomfortable because you're gonna learn some things about weed that are pretty disheartening. So I want you to know that everything I say in this video comes from real life knowledge, real life research, and it comes from the heart, brother. I'm gonna get pretty passionate in this video because of what weed did to me, right? But it comes from the heart, brother. So let's get right into it with number one, which is intelligence. Now, we all know that when you're high, we're a little less intelligent, right? We can do math problems a little worse. Maybe we're a little more creative, but our memory is worse. Our ability to communicate is worse, right? It's much more of a relaxed, not focused on important work task. Now, we all know that. What we don't know is the long-term effect of weed. So as far as intelligence goes, brothers, like I said, I smoked a lot of weed in high school, right? In high school, I also thought I had ADHD because I couldn't focus on anything in class, right? I was gonna take ADHD meds, AKA meth or AKA Adderall for this problem. I did not read a single book from front to back in my entirety of high school, right? Partly because I never taught anything I was interested in, but also partly because I was brain dead up here. What weed actually does is that as an adolescent, if you are smoking weed on a consistent basis, meaning more than twice a week, that is classified as chronic weed use, which is more than twice a week, your brain develops slower. More specifically, the prefrontal cortex, a part of your brain that is responsible for decision making, social behavior, and impulse control. And so this part of our brain is very important that develops in our youth. And so if we are slowing the development of this part of our brain, that is bad. That is bad because as human beings, we want to be successful. In order to be successful, we need to be able to make good decisions. If we don't make good decisions, we won't be successful. In addition, memory, brothers. We all know that our memory is trashed while we're smoking. Now, I don't care as much about that as the long-term effects of our memory. I remember sitting on my couch. I think this was like when I first started smoking. And my brother was saying, yeah, weed's not that bad, but it kind of screws up your memory a little bit, right? He's like, my memory definitely got worse. And I realized, you know what, my memory's gotten worse too. But I didn't really care because I was young, I was happy, I would smoke, I would eat Taco Bell. Life was fine, I didn't have any long-term thinking. But now since I want to actually be a high-quality man, I need to be able to remember things, including words, knowledge, the name of the person I just met, and then the multiple studies that show adolescents who smoke 2 or more times per week, aka chronic weed smoking, score extremely lower in almost all areas of intelligence, right? So there is no argument that weed makes you less intelligent. It is frying your brain. Now there's some unfortunate news and some good news. The unfortunate news is that your brain fully develops by the time it's about 25, and if you're slowing that process, it's kind of hard to get it back, right? You don't really get it back. The best thing you could do is stop smoking weed and start doing smart things. I want you guys to take me, for example, right? When I learned about these things, it was extremely disheartening. I was like, I fucked up my brain. I've not even only been a chronic weed smoker, a heavy weed smoker all day, every day. And so it was very upsetting to learn about this in the beginning of my journey. However, I went from not being able to read a book at all to I literally have 50 to 60 books down there that I read in a period of a couple years, right? I could read as much as I want, I could focus as much as I want, I could speak well now because I put in the work and I cut the weed out, right? And so you can too. But from this point, I want you to forget about the past and focus on the future, what you can do to improve, which is cut the shit out. Number 2. Anxiety. Specifically, social anxiety. Now, there's a cultural consensus that weed reduces anxiety. And yes, for some people, while they're high, their anxiety may be reduced, including myself, right? When I was in high school, I didn't have that much anxiety. I didn't get anxiety until I got my heart broke, my identity shattered, and that was the first time I actually tried cutting out weed. I was like, I knew I needed a life change, so I cut out the weed for a little bit, and I was feeling super anxious because I didn't have my weed. I smoked again. It's like, oh, this feels really good. Weed is really good for my anxiety, right? And so I kept smoking until freshman year of college, right? Then I started my transformation journey. If you guys know my story, you know my journey, right? My full story is on my YouTube, so go watch that. But I started my transformation journey, still smoking a little bit. I watched a video by Andrew Huberman called Weed, Health, and Harms, right? And in this video, I learned pretty much all the things you guys are gonna be learning today. And that's when I cut it out cold turkey, right? Because I realized that weed actually wasn't helping my anxiety. What weed was doing is causing my anxiety when I was not high. So I want you guys to look at it like this, and we're gonna use young Joe as the example. So this is young Joe, and this is his level of anxiety, his baseline level of anxiety. Joe is an anxious person. Say this is the average anxiety of the average person. I was a little more anxious than usual, right? But guess what? When I smoked weed, I got less anxious, right? And so I really like weed because it made me less anxious. And the high fades off and I'm back to here, right? But guess what? Joe wants to go back to here, so he smokes more weed, comes back here, smokes more weed. But what Joe didn't know is every time he smoked weed, his baseline of anxiety kept raising, because while you're high, your anxiety's gone, but when you're a chronic smoker, your baseline of anxiety raises. And so it was like putting a Band-Aid on an amputated leg, but the Band-Aid is poisonous and making me bleed even more, right? That's what it was going on, and I had no idea, because the cultural consensus is that weed cures anxiety. No, there's a reason I felt so unconfident around friends and family, and especially chicks. And what I thought was the cure was really the poison, brothers. Crazy, right? In addition, weed causes depression. Studies show that a person who smokes weed heavily is 4 times more likely to have depression than the non-smoker.
But nonetheless, anxiety increases over time. Also, it's very clear that depression increases over time, and especially, this is surprising to me, but especially for individuals that were not depressed at the outset of their use. In other words, they didn't start using cannabis because they were depressed, but rather the depression starts to emerge as a consequence of the cannabis and THC use. So that's serious. In fact, we now know, based on really solid epidemiological evidence, that depression is not a strong predictor of seeking out cannabis. It doesn't drive terribly many people to seek out cannabis use. But cannabis use itself makes people 4 times likelier to develop a chronic major depression. So anxiety is increasing, depression is increasing.
Wow, Western medication yet again lying to you and telling you the solution to your problem is really what is actually causing it. So without a doubt, weed causes anxiety in the long term, and for a lot of people in the short term too. All right, let's move on. Next one. Drive and discipline. Now, what weed does is it floods the brain with dopamine. That's a really good feeling you get when you smoke. However, a couple hours later, guess what happens to your dopamine? It crashes. And so that's why you feel like a zombie for the rest of your day. But what your brain tells yourself is that what the weed does is give you that really good feeling before you smoke. So your brain associates the weed with the dopamine, not the crash that comes after. It's a brutal cycle, brother. So going back to the prefrontal cortex, which we already discussed, stops developing when you're smoking weed on a weekly basis. This part of your brain is responsible for impulse control. Now, in order to be disciplined, you have to not give into your impulses, and if the part of your brain that is responsible for giving into impulses is not developing, you're gonna have a problem with discipline and drive. Another thing it does is it shrinks the nucleus accumbens. And what the nucleus accumbens is responsible for is drive and seeking achievement. So when you smoke, dopamine floods that part of the brain. And over time with consistent usage, that part of the brain shrinks. It shrinks. Do you want to achieve things, brother? Do you want to? Well, guess what? If you do, you need drive and discipline. What you don't need is a drug that's instant gratification, that makes you less intelligent, more anxious, and kills your drive and discipline. That is not what you need, brother. And whether you like it or not, this is all true. All the bullshit you see on the billboards, all the things society tells you, all the things your boys tell you that weed is good for you, weed makes you feel better, weed sparks your creativity. Learn how to be creative without it. Learn how to be creative without doing all these things to your brain, bro. So this is what the weed does to your brain. What it does to your psyche, what it does to your confidence, what it does to your intelligence, right? Now let's get into something a little different. Physical health. Now, smoking things is bad for your lungs, right? No, whether you like it or not. There's studies that say it's worse for your lungs than tobacco. There's studies that say it's the same. There's studies that say it's slightly around there. Whether you like it or not, it's quite similar to tobacco for your health. But the thing about tobacco is it actually helps you focus. Weed doesn't. So I'd argue that if you want to be successful, it's worse to be addicted to weed than be addicted to tobacco. You're better off with neither, but a lot of people say, oh, at least I'm not an alcoholic. Oh, at least I'm not addicted to cigarettes. No, but you're addicted to the zombie drug, brother. In addition, weed fucks up your sleep. Right? So many people are like, oh, I just smoke weed at night, it helps me fall asleep. It's destroying your quality of sleep. Your REM sleep turns to shit if you smoke before bed, right? There's quality and there's quantity. You need both. And it might help with your quantity of sleep a little bit, but it's not good for your quality. So guess what? If it's hard to fall asleep without weed, what you need to do is take a period of time. It's gonna be a little bit uncomfortable where you don't smoke weed, you get a little less sleep, but you're regaining your sovereignty and regaining your quality of sleep. And I'm not gonna go down a rabbit hole for how important sleep is for mental health, physical health, spiritual health, XYZ, right? But sleep is pretty damn important and you're destroying it with the weed you smoke. So I do admit, I've just been talking about the negatives of weed, right? These are all pretty bad, they're all real, but I've just been talking about the negatives. Let's get into the positives real quick, right? There are none! There's no positives! I'm not in the game of instant gratification, I'm in the game of long-term fulfillment. It's like asking me what the benefits of junk food are. There are none. It feels good in the moment, but it's destroying the rest of your life. Oh, it helps with my anxiety. Bullshit. Oh, it's making me more creative. Bullshit. Oh, I'm really productive when I smoke. Bullshit. Oh, I need it for my sleep. Bullshit. It's poison. And my guy, I'm not coming from the outside when I tell you this. I was in it. I was smoking all day, every day, believing all these things weren't true, right? And it wasn't until I quit that I saw. I've never met a person who is addicted to weed, who quits, and is not like, oh my God, I didn't realize how much it was fucking me up. You don't live in a senior home, brother. You're not a cancer patient. And if you are, you can disregard this. Smoke all the weed you want. But I'm talking to you. I'm talking to the one who clicked on this video because you know you need to change, bro. Now, I think I have made my point that you do not need this in your life and it is extremely destructive. So how do we cut it out? Well, first we must understand that she is the great deceiver. Now, in my process of quitting weed and in my process of helping many other men quit weed, I have learned a simple fact. That when you are trying to quit weed, your brain lies to you. And specifically, your brain lies to you by telling you that it's not all these things. And it also lies to you by telling you how good it's gonna feel, brother. I know you know that feeling. You're like, I know I shouldn't smoke right now, but it's gonna feel so good. You smoke, it feels good for 10 to 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes, and then you regret that bullshit. You feel like a zombie for the next 6 hours, right? It's a liar. Weed is a liar, brother. Your brain is always associating the weed with all the benefits, the instant gratification hit, the creativity, the anxiety relief. It's not associating it with these things, right? You gotta wake up. You gotta understand that weed is a big fat liar. You know who else are liars? Are all the people who are addicted to it who say it's not a problem, right? They will tell you that you don't need to quit, bro. You don't need to quit, which gets me into environment, right? You gotta surround yourself with the right environment. It's extremely difficult to stop smoking weed if everyone you hang around smokes weed, if your roommate smokes weed, if you have weed around you 24/7, if people who know you're trying to quit aren't trying to help you, right? That is gonna be one tough battle because without them, you already have someone trying to convince you that you should, and that's your own self. One of the guys I'm working with right now has been addicted to weed his whole life, right? And he knows he needs to quit. So we built a chart that he fills out every day that says, what are you doing before you smoked? How strong was the urge? Did you try to resist? How you felt after, and then any notes he filled out after, right? We broke it down and we realized that his brain was convincing him that he needed it. His brain was convincing him that it makes him more social. His brain was convincing him that it makes his workouts better, right? But when he was coming from a conscious place, he knew damn well it wasn't. And so we realized he has a liar inside of his brain. He has a deceiver. He has the devil telling him that he needs the devil's grass. And my boy bossed up and he just had his first sober day yesterday because he knows that these things don't help him achieve the things he wants, and he really wants to achieve the things he wants to achieve. He wants it bad. In addition, if you're on the journey of quitting weed, you gotta get off the vapes, bro. You cannot have a little pen that is so accessible, that is so cheap, that is so easy to hit, that contains not just weed in it, but it contains all of these things in a little pen that you get to suck on whenever you want. That there's no resistance for you to hit. You gotta get rid of it, brother. You can't be going brain damage, social anxiety, complacency, damaging my lungs and sleep. Yummy. It's gotta go. It's gotta go, brother. It's gotta go. That shit is so addictive. I've been there. And we must realize that weed is addictive. If you've been told otherwise, you're lying, right? We all know people who want to quit weed, but they can't, right? Maybe that's you. And so understanding that's addictive means understanding that you're gonna have some withdrawals when you stop, right? You're gonna have some withdrawals when you stop. But those withdrawals, you gotta think of it as the devil leaving your body. Good, my appetite's gone. I can't sleep. It's leaving me. I'm doing what needs to be done to eliminate all that, right? You gotta see the discomfort as freedom, my guy. The first couple days are gonna be the hardest. Once you get to a week, it's gonna get easier. Once you get to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it should be completely gone, my guy. You should have freedom again, right? And I want you to know, brother, there's a version of you that doesn't smoke weed that is so much better than the version of you that does. Create a list of things that you want to achieve and create a list of things that are gonna take you away from that, one of which is weed. I'm so passionate about this topic, brother, because I know what it did to me, right? And I know all the lies I believed for so long because I was not enlightened in this way. And so what I'm trying to do for you is education, which was knowledge, which was knowing what it actually does to you, right? My guy, you got this, bro. You fucking got this. If you don't smoke and you just want to watch for fun, help your friends out. I hope this sparked the desire for you to cut the bullshit out and actually achieve your highest self, my guy. You can talk to me in the comments, or you can DM me on Instagram, brother. I am here for you in this journey. I drop game all the time on Instagram, so go follow me there, right? I love you, boys. Good luck on your journey. Let's go!